So my presentation today, as I was ordered by Sheikh Imran Hussein, will be about history. So I'll try to, in a way, summarize the history of war against Palestine and how international Zionism, a ghost which was killed by the Romans, was recreated by the British and the Zionists. Now, first of all, if any one of you hears the speeches of evangelical Zionists or Benjamin Netanyahu, they claim that God has given to the Jews Palestine. But it was not God, it was the British. Was there a Jewish state in history? Yes, there was. But this Jewish state was killed by the Romans in the year 135, when after the Jews rejected Jesus, the curse of Allah came upon them. Allah sent the Romans, and in the three major Jewish-Roman wars between the year 66 to the year 136, the Romans destroyed once and for all the Jewish state. The final blow to the Jewish state will come by the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who is going even to totally destroy Jerusalem and will ban the Jews from what we know as Palestine. The name Palestina is a Roman name, because these people, they were so evil and so cursed. They were terrorists. The Romans had to make a final solution for them and to exterminate them once and for all. With the massacres that will happen during the first and the second Jewish-Roman wars, the Roman emperors like Titus and Vespasian, they will make sure to crush the Jewish resistance against Roman civilization. But then what will happen, as Sheikh mentioned, in the year 1897, the ghost of Israel will come back from the dead. There was no Israel for almost 1,900 years. But for those who know the history of Russia, what will happen in Russia is that during the 8th century, a Turkic Slavic tribe known as the Khazars, who were living in what we know nowadays as Ukraine, they will adopt the Jewish religion. These Khazar Jews, who will come under the power of the Russian principality of the Rurikid family, in the 10th century will be invaded by the Russians, Prince Yaroslav, and in the year 998, when Prince Vladimir will embrace the Orthodox Christianity, the Khazars of Ukraine, most of them will be converted into Orthodox Christianity. The rest of these Jewish Khazars, for the next 1,000 years, will live under the Russian Christian rule. But then in the 19th century, we will have a Russian Tsar whose name is Alexander II, who is going to liberate the Jews from the serfdom that they were, according to the Christian law, condemned to live in. And what is going to happen is that during the era of Alexander II, we'll have many of these white Jews, but these people, they are not Yahudi, they are not Beni Israel, they are Khazars, which, I mean, they are Turkic, Slavicized Turkic people. They will start to move across Western Europe. Many will escape to the United States. And this will be the moment when Jews, or the white Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, will become a major problem for Western and for European governments. Alexander II, who will liberate the Jews in the year 861, will be killed by a terrorist organization known as Narodnya Volia, the people's will. Many Jews will embrace socialism, communism, radicalism. The European response will be security measures. In Russia, we will have even pogroms when Russians will blame them for their poverty, for the control of their economy, for the usury, because for those who know the history of Islam and Christianity, usury is haram, is prohibited. And the usurers in Europe, historically, the bankers, we call them nowadays, were always Jews. And they were the people who were ruining the lives of the people. So we will have a massive wave of anti-Semitism until the year 1897, when this gentleman that you see him here in the picture, Theodor Herzl, will come up with a book known Der Judenstaat, the Jewish state. Herzl is going to propose to wealthy Jewish bankers and intellectuals in Western Europe. I mean, the late 19th century was the century of colonialism and imperialism. And he's going to propose to them to use their power and money to influence the Western governments and to manage to create a Jewish state for the Jews. The proposals that Herzl gives in his book is to create Israel either in Palestine or in Argentina. Now, after the book of Theodor Herzl, we will have different Zionist Jewish organizations from the United States to Europe, which are going to come with proposals of building their state by colonizing either somewhere in Africa, in America, but the most important proposal was Palestine. Now, when Theodor Herzl will come up with his proposal for creating a Jewish state, and we will have a Zionist international organization to be established, the Zionist Jews, or the white Jews, or those that we call nowadays as Ashkenazim, I mean, if you see the leaders of Israel, from David Ben-Gurion to Benjamin Netanyahu, they are not Yahudi, they are Slavs. They are from Poland, from Russia, from Ukraine, from Belarus, from Romania, from Slovenia, from Czech Republic, etc. Now, when these white Western Jews or European Jews will start to work for the creation of their own colony in Palestine, they will have a major problem. Palestine was not free. Muslims were living there. Since the time of Umar ibn Khattab, Jerusalem and Quds was a very important city for Islam. Palestine was part of Sham, and Palestine was under Ottoman rule. Wealthy Jewish bankers like Theodor Herz and others, they will approach Sultan Abdul Hamid II, who was the Caliph of Sunni Islam in Istanbul, and they will tell him, look, we will give you anything that you want. We're going to pay off your debt. Just let us settle in Palestine. In this time, the Ottoman Empire was suffering a major crisis. During the War of Crimea, 1853 to 1856, Sultan Abdul-Majid, who was convinced by the British and the French to attack Russia, had borrowed massive amounts of money from the Rothschild brothers in London. The borrowing happened in the year 1854. By the year 1879, the debt of the Ottoman state had grown 5 times. And because the Ottoman state didn't have money to pay this riba, so they took 1 ringgit and the Jewish bankers sent their debt into 5 ringgit, finally the Ottoman state went bankrupt and declared bankruptcy. In the year 1879 to 1802, the British and the French governments, they will blackmail the Ottoman state by establishing an institution known as Dette Ottoman, and all the customs of the Ottoman Empire were taken by Zionist bankers. So let us say here in Malaysia you have the port of Johor or Port Klang. Imagine that everything that you bring in this country, it is taxed not by the Malaysian governments, but by the Jewish bankers. So the Ottoman state was bankrupt. So the Zionists who knew this, they went to Sultan Abdul Hamid and they told him, look, we are going to pay off your debt, we will rebuild your empire, you will be prosperous, just give us Palestine. Sultan Abdul Hamid refused it. He said, no, Palestine doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Islam. For this reason, what they did, because they were controlling the press in the West, they declared Sultan Abdul Hamid to be the so-called Red Sultan. Sultan Abdul Hamid was depicted in the West as a butcher, a killer, a sultan who had blood in his hands. For those of you who follow nowadays Western propaganda against Iran, you can compare it with the depiction that the Zionist lobby was doing to President of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi. He was being called the butcher of Tehran. The same was the situation at the end of the 19th century. Sultan Abdul Hamid was depicted as a butcher, as an oriental despot, and Islam was depicted as an evil religion. So what is going to happen, as Sheikh Imran mentioned, when they will see that they cannot do anything against Abdul Hamid, they will start to fund the Ottoman opposition, a movement which will be known as the Young Turks. The first conference of the Young Turks will happen in 1902, and the Zionists, they are going to sponsor Ottoman intellectuals. Some were Turks, some were Albanians, some were Arabs, some were Armenians, Greeks, and what have you. And all this will be used, number one, to penetrate the Ottoman state, 2, to create fitna against the Ottoman state, 3, to call for regime change. Those of you who know the recent history of Syria, Iraq, and Iran, you might see a déjà vu. You will always see a Syrian opposition protesting against the dictator Assad, Iranian opposition protesting against the mullahs of Tehran. It is the same script. But what will happen is that this movement, which will be sponsored again by the Rothschild brothers, finally in the year 1908 will manage to organize a regime change in Istanbul. Sultan Abdul Hamid will be toppled from power, like Bashar al-Assad was toppled from power few months ago in Damascus, Syria by Al-Qaeda, and we will have democracy. We'll have nice guys coming to power who are known as the Jeune Turks. Now, when the Jeune Turks will come to power, there will be a bunch of psychopaths, adventurers, and crazy nationalists. Sultan Abdul Hamid, he had weaponized Islam during his rule. He was appealing to Muslims from Albania to the Straits of Malacca to Johor and Aceh that I am your caliph. I am the caliph of Islam and we must remain united in order to protect ourselves from the British, the French, Russian, and European colonialism. But what is going to happen after the Jeune Turks will take power in Istanbul? They will topple the Sultan, they will put Islam aside, and they will say, no, we are no longer Muslims, we are Ottomans, and in particular, we are Turks. As you can imagine, this will create a lot of chaos and unhappiness in the Ottoman Empire. The government, the Ottoman government in this time, will try to Turkify everyone. So the Arabs will say, no, how can you Turkify us? We are Arabs, we are descendants of the Prophet. Albanians will do the same, Greeks, Armenians, Kurds, and what have you. Nationalism, which is a pre-Islamic Kabiliyah and Jahiliyyah, we know what Allah tells to the Quraysh in Surah Al-Fil and Surah Quraysh. Allah warns them, you are nobody, we are all equal. Because the major enemy of Prophet Muhammad were the Qurayshi nationalists. They were telling to Muhammad, what are you doing? Who are these people who come after you? They are slaves and blacks. But the Prophet said, no, the best among you is the one who fears Allah the most. Now we'll have the coming of Turkish Jahiliyyah, and apart from it, we'll have, Western Orientalists and Zionists. They are going to sponsor extreme nationalism from the Arab world to the Albanians. Everybody now will leave Islam aside and they'll say, oh, we are not Muslims, we are Malays, we are Indonesians. There were no Malays in the time, in Ottoman Empire, but Turks and Kurds and Arabs and Albanians and what have you. And then we'll have the start of World War I. When World War I will start, the Ottoman state, who in this time was commanded by an Albanian, I am Albanian, Enver Pasha, will decide to join the war on the side of the Central Powers. We'll have two major blocks of powers which are going to fight. We'll have the Central Powers led by Germany, Austro-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. And then we will have the Allied powers led by France, United Kingdom, Russia, Italy, and the United States. Now, when the war will start, the Zionists, they will think that the time has come for them to revenge on the Ottomans. In 1917, when the British Empire was being defeated by the Germans, we will have the Zionist mafia, which is going to approach the British government, and they will make a deal with the British. The British in this time, they were very desperate. They needed money and soldiers. And they will tell to the British, we will give them both to you. Money? Yes. Soldiers? Yes. What happened in 1917? They convinced the United States to join the war against Germany. The result was victory for the British against the Germans. And as the Germans will be defeated, the Ottomans, who were their allies, will also be defeated. And finally, on December 9, 1917, the British will capture Jerusalem. When Jerusalem will be captured, the British and American press, they are going to celebrate this as a victory of cross over the crescent, of Christianity over Islam. As you can see from this newspaper clip, the New York Herald, which was run by the Jews, will run this big title, Jerusalem is rescued by British after 673 years of Muslim rule. Now, the World War I will be a crusade not only against Islam, but it will be a crusade against Christianity as well. At the end of World War I, we'll have the destruction of the last three remaining religious empires of our planet. We had the Russian Tsardom, which will be toppled by the Bolsheviks, who happen to be Jews as well, in 1917. Tsar Nicholas II will be assassinated, and Russia will turn itself into Soviet Union, where the Bolsheviks will assassinate thousands of priests, destroy churches, and declare war on Christianity. We'll have the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was the last European empire officially defending Catholic Christianity, and the Catholics will be left without a religious state in Europe. We'll have only the Vatican, which later, thanks to Mussolini and the Lateran Accords, will be recognized as a mini-state. And then the most important of all will be the dismemberment of the Ottoman Empire. By the dismemberment of Ottoman Empire, we will have more than 5 million Muslims which will be massacred from the Black Sea to the Balkans. For those of you who probably sometimes go to the Balkans and do your Balkan tours, if you go to Belgrade, if you go to Athens, if you go to Thessaloniki, if you go to Sofia, you will see mosques, you will see bazaars. These, once upon a time, were Muslim cities. They were like Kelantan or Kuala Lumpur or Putrajaya. But what will happen is that at the end of this war, Muslims will be massacred. They will be deported to Turkey. Until today, most of the Turkish leaders, from Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who was an Albanian, to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is a Laz, he's a Georgian, to Necmettin Erbakan, who was a Dagestani, to Ahmet Davutoglu, who was a Crimean, majority of the Turks, they are not Turks. They are Muslims from Europe and Russia. They're muhajirs. But while Muslims will lose their territories and they will be ethnically cleansed from Bosnia to Greece to Serbia to Bulgaria, the worst will come for the Palestinians. Because in 1917, when the British will make their deal with the Zionists, they will come up with this document known as the Balfour Declaration. Part of the deal for the Zionist bankers to help the British win the war against Germany and the Ottomans was that the British had to give them Palestine. And this is the official British document known as the Balfour Declaration. So what is going to happen is that since 1917, we will have a massive colonization of Palestine. The majority of the Jews who will come to Palestine, they will come from Eastern Europe. They will be white Jews. They will be Slavs, so they will not be Yahudi. Now, the powers of Europe, they were interested to get rid of the Jews. They hated Jews. And we know from the history of pogroms to the Holocaust, or if you listen nowadays, Jews cry about anti-Semitism. Our players are being attacked in Netherlands, and Netanyahu sends his planes and he blackmails European governments. Historically, the Europeans, they hated the Jews. They hated them from the time of the Romans because of the Christianity, because according to Christianity, they are cursed people. They are people who killed Jesus, alayhi salam. And of course, because they were bankers, they were bloodsuckers, they were people who were sucking the blood of Europeans through usury. So when World War I will finish, we will see that Britain, but even other powers of Europe, among others, even Nazi Germany, they will have an interest on pushing their Jewish population out of Europe and sending them to Palestine. So, while the British will be the first to support Jewish colonization of Palestine, we will have even Nazi Germany. Here, you see the so-called Havara Agreement between the German government and the Zionist organization, where the German state was more than happy to provide even financial assistance for the Jews to go to Palestine. Exactly what Germany or Austria does nowadays, or even Trump, the so-called deportation of illegal immigrants. Sometimes they give you even money to go back to Afghanistan or Iraq. Now, as the Jewish settlers will come to Palestine, we will have tensions between the Arabs or Palestinians and the Jews, because when they will come, they will start to kill the local Arabs, to take over their properties. They will establish their Yishuv communities, and they will be supported by the British to go and hunt and kill the Arabs, like white South Africans will do against the blacks. But in the year 1939, as World War II will start, where Germany will try to revenge against the British and the Zionists about what they had done to them during World War I, we will have fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, which will come into conflict with the British Empire and by extension, the Zionist colony of Palestine. In 1940, it will be the Kingdom of Italy. I mean, the first country which is going to bomb Tel Aviv will not be Iran in 2024 during the Operation True Promise, but it will be Mussolini. We will have Italian jets going and bombing Tel Aviv. So we'll have fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, which are going to join the war against British imperialism and international Zionism. In their war propaganda, Germans, they will try to mobilize Muslims. Here you have a picture of Hajj Amin al-Hussein meeting with Adolf Hitler, where Germans, they were hoping to mobilize the Muslims to liberate themselves from Zionism. Nazi Germany will use a lot of pan-Islamic propaganda. Here you can see a picture of Hajj Amin al-Hussein meeting with Azerbaijani Muslims who had joined the Nazi legions to fight against the Soviets. And on the right, you see a picture of Bosniak soldiers of the SS Sanjak division reading the book of Hajj Amin al-Hussein, Islam and Judaism. Now, World War II, as we all know, will end with the defeat of Germany and Italy. So the Arabs, they will not be able to liberate themselves from the Zionists. With the end of World War II, we will have the establishment of a new world order, which will be a Zionist world order like it was before. But this new Zionist world order will be even more aggressive than before. Jewish terrorists, like the Irgun and Lehi gang, in 1947, they will turn against their British inventors. The British who enabled the Jews to come from all over the world and establish their colony now will be assassinated by Jewish terrorists. The British will be killed and will be forced to leave Palestine, and finally, in May 1948, Jewish white colonists who were brought by the British in Palestine will declare the creation of the State of Israel. The first country which is going to support the creation of the State of Israel will be the United States, which from 1947 onwards is going to replace Great Britain. If in 1917 it was the British who invented the Jewish colony in Palestine under the Mandate of Palestine, from 1947 onwards, the Jews will take total control of the United States, and we will have President Harry Truman, who is going even to blackmail the British to leave Palestine, or else they will sanction Britain. The creation of Israel will open the Pandora's box for the world, and in particular the Arab world. Since its creation in 1948, to this very moment that we're speaking, the job of Israel has been killing. In 1948, when Jewish colonist settlers, they will create Israel, they will start their creation with Al-Nakba. This will be the first major massacre of Palestinians, where Jewish settlers, they will use terrorism as a state policy in order to scare the Arabs and to force them to leave. The war of 1948 will be followed by the war of 1956, 67, 73, where in all these wars, except for the war of 1973, it will be Israel the aggressor. And Israel is not going to kill only Palestinians, but they're going to kill and bomb every Arab around them. Syrians, Jordanians, Lebanese, Egyptians, and what have you. Now, when Israel was created as a state in 1948, it will be a failed state. I mean, okay, we had all these Jewish colonies, which the Zionist movement will bring to Palestine, but the question is, and then what? I mean, Palestine was an agricultural area, most of it was desert, so how to construct and to build a state? Well, Israel was built on stolen Arab land with stolen German money. In 1952, the Americans will force West Germany to pay war reparations to Israel, and if you go until today, most of the roads, the railways, the ports that Israel had were built with German blood and money. Now, while Israel will be formed and sponsored with German and later Western American money, this will be an aggressor state. Israel is going to have, as I mentioned before, a number of wars against its Arab neighbors. The first will be the war of 1948, the second, the war of 1956, the third, the war of 1967. In all these wars, Israel will go to war against mainly Egypt and Syria because these were the two major adversaries of Israel. Egypt in particular, because Egypt, you cannot see here in the map, was controlling the Strait of Tiran. The Strait of Tiran is the access that Israel has to the Red Sea through the port of Eilat. So what the Houthis are doing today in Yemen, where they have stopped Israeli shipping from going through the Red Sea, the same thing will be done by Egypt in 1956 and 67. So whenever Israel was stopped to have access to the Red Sea, they will call the Americans or the British or the French, and they'll say, let's go to war. You have seen what President Donald Trump did against Yemen for the past weeks. They bombed the hell out of Yemen, and the only reason is because they don't want to allow Israeli shipping. Now, the most tragic war for the Muslims after the creation of Israel in 1948 was the Six-Day War, or the War of 1967. Because during this war, Israel will invade Gaza Strip, which until now it was under Egyptian control, or was part of Egypt, and the West Bank. And in particular, Israel will invade Beitul Muqaddas, Masjid al-Aqsa, which until this time belonged to Jordan. With the war of 1967, those Palestinians who had survived the war of 1948, and they were removed from their homes from Tel Aviv to other Israeli cities, and they were sent to West Bank and the Gaza Strip, will now become slaves of the Israeli occupation. Now, we will have another major Arab-Israeli war, the war of 1973, during which war Israel faced a formidable enemy, which was Egypt, like it faced Iran in 2024. Now, because Egypt understood the power of, Israel understood the power of Egypt, they will bring the Americans, who will, in a way, bribe the Egyptian leadership. And finally, with the Camp David Accords of 1978 and the Egyptian-Israeli Peace Treaty of 1979, they will make sure that Egypt is going to go out of the game. The Americans, they are going to bribe the Egyptian president, Anwar Sadat, who will later be killed by the Egyptian revolutionary Khaled Istanbuli. Now, during 1970s and 1980s, even after the Camp David Accords, the Palestinians and the Arabs in general, they will manage to resist Zionism. Why? Because we have Soviet Union. For as long as Soviet Union was there, and it was arming Arabs from Yemen to Syria, they were arming and training the Fatah and other Palestinian organizations. Israel was afraid. They could not do much. But then, when the year 1991 will come, we will have a new reality. On September 11, 1991, This is September 11, 1991, not 2001, exactly 10 years before the 9/11. President George Bush the first will declare the establishment of a new world order. He is going to address the US Congress after the Americans had defeated Iraq during the first Gulf War, and he will declare that now that Soviet Union is no longer around, we will establish a new world order. What this new world order will bring about will be the massive I don't think you can hear this. So we will have the establishment of a new world order when the United States and Israel will start a series of wars against the Arabs. The Americans, number one, they will try to force the Palestinians to sign the Oslo Accords, where they were promised to be given a state in parts of West Bank and Gaza Strip. But the Oslo Accords, they will be destroyed by a young Israeli politician, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is going to incite Jewish extremists to kill Prime Minister Rabin. And from 1995 to this day, you will see the massive killings of Palestinians. Parallel with the massive killings of the Palestinians, Benjamin Netanyahu, who will become the main brain of Zionism and who will command US policies, he's going to direct the Americans to launch a total war against Islam. We'll have a war against Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and finally Iran. Apart from this, we will have the September 11 attacks, and these attacks will be used as a justification by the international Zionist movement to declare Islam a terrorist religion. I mean, every time that we travel in the airplanes, when they check us, what we have with us, or every time that we enter in Malaysia or in every country that we have to declare how much money we have, and if we have more than $10,000 with us, we'll be charged. All these policies will be implemented by the Zionists, who will now declare a war, like Netanyahu says in this video, against militant Islam. Since 1995, Benjamin Netanyahu will predict that Muslims are one day going to bomb the World Trade Center. So, how many years? 6 years before that, Ken? Yeah, so 1995, 6 years before that. So, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to continuously tell to American policymakers that Muslims are going to attack the Twin Towers, and for this reason, he will push the Americans to go to war against Islam. And in his many videos, which I cannot play them here, he will appeal to the Americans and tell them openly that now that we destroyed the Russians, we have to go to war against Iraq, Syria, Iran. So I cannot, you cannot hear this, but here you have another video by the former Supreme Commander of NATO, General Wesley Clark, the person who led to the bombing of Yugoslavia, who in 2001 made this declaration. So after September 11, when he visited the White House, or the State Department, he heard that the plans of the Americans was that in the next 5 years, the Americans had to destroy 7 Muslim countries, starting with Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing with Iran. So I'm playing the video. You can only read. You cannot hear.
Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. If you were Iran, you'd probably believe that you were mostly already at war with the United States anyway, since we've asserted that they're...
So what the Americans will do is they'll take control of the planet. And as the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad, declared in 2003, they managed to rule the world.
Today the Jews rule this world by proxy. They get others to fight and die for them. They invented socialism, communism, human rights and democracy so that persecuting them would appear to be wrong, so they may enjoy equal rights with others. With these, they have now gained control of the most powerful countries, and they, this tiny community, have become a world power.
So the fall of the Soviet Union will enable the Zionists, like Prime Minister Mahathir mentioned, to rule the planet. And while Israel will continue to butcher and massacre the Palestinians, every Arab leader that you can see here in the picture who stood with the Palestinians will be dead. Look at the picture. From Hafez al-Assad to Muammar al-Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Hosni Mubarak, and the last one, Bashar al-Assad. The Zionists and the Americans will go against every single leader who will support the Palestinians. Now, with the coming of Trump to power in 2017, we will see a new development in the power of Zionism over the world. Donald Trump will come with the so-called the Abraham Accords, where those Arab countries which were not destroyed and agreed to support Zionism will be called to form a so-called an Arab NATO against Iran and Palestine. Now, President Trump, for his support that he will give to Zionism, and by forcefully forcing Arab countries from United Arab Emirates to Bahrain, to Morocco and Sudan and Saudi Arabia to support Israel, he will be declared by the Zionists to be the new Cyrus. For those who have read the book of Esther, Cyrus is a mythical Persian Shah who saved the Jews from their enemies. And they will promote Donald Trump, they will push Donald Trump by hoping that Donald Trump will enable them to have their final solution against Islam and the Palestinians. As soon as Trump will come to power, he will continue the policies of previous American presidents. He will ban Muslims from 7 Muslim countries, Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, to enter in Palestine. And he will take many policies which we know until today, where he is even arresting students and university professors who dare to speak against genocide. Now, while the Zionists, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, they took over the planet, there will be a Muslim resistance. There will be an Islamic resistance. In 2006, we will have Iran, which will mobilize Islamic militias from Iraq to Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Yemen, and form an axis for resistance against Zionism. The culmination of this axis will come on October 7, 2023, when Hamas will attack Israel. The response to the attack of Hamas by Israel will be the genocide. The response of the axis of resistance will be a joint military attack against Israel by Iran and Islamic militias in Iraq, in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Palestine. Now, all this axis of resistance will come to an end in November 2024, after Hezbollah will be forced to sign an armistice with Israel. As soon as Hezbollah will sign the armistice with Israel, the Americans will organize, CIA is going to organize a coup in Syria, where this gentleman that you see here in picture, a terrorist by the name Mohammed al-Jawlani, for whom the Americans had put a $10 million reward, he was a terrorist, he was the head of Al-Qaeda, will finally be brought to power, and he will be declared the new president or dictator of Israel, of Syria. So here you have the new president of Syria, ex-head of Al-Qaeda, who is going to topple Bashar al-Assad, who 3 days ago, or 4 days ago, he met with President Trump, and President Trump praised these ex-terrorists on a condition that Syria abandons Palestine and establishes ties with Israel. Now, I went through this lengthy historical summary in order to give you a better picture about what Zionism has done against the Palestinians. For those of you who want to read and understand the blueprint of Zionist terrorism, I suggest you to read the book. There are 2 books by Benjamin Netanyahu. One is International Terrorism, Challenge and Response, and another one is Fighting Terrorism by Benjamin Netanyahu. These books, the first one was published in 1970s, while the second one is in 1995. They show us the blueprint which Israel has for destroying the Islamic world, wiping out the Palestinians, subjugating the Muslims, and creating what the Zionists want to do, which is the Eretz Israel. As you can see here in the map, this is the biblical Israel that the Zionists want to establish. Their dream is to invade Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, parts of Turkey, Jordan, and Palestine, and to create their biblical state. I mean, Israel is a messianic country, is a messianic state. It is a ghost which was brought back from the dead by the British, but this ghost is taking millions of lives. Thank you very much.